Hello and welcome to Deprogram with Carrie Smith. We are live. We're going to be doing a short episode today. It's going to be part of a series about how the woke left is a cult. And today's episode is going to be specifically about ideological conformity, about how data shows, survey shows, science. They love to talk about science, right? Science shows that currently, and it's been this way for a while now, the modern left, you have a very narrow set of accepted ideological beliefs as compared to the right. We're going to look at a study. We're going to talk about some examples, and then I'm going to give some advice on how to talk to people who are finding their loved ones being pulled into this cult that I used to be in. A little background on me, if you're new here. I was in the woke cult for 20 years. I was indoctrinated at Duke University. I picked it up in the late 90s. The people who were my age group who picked it up at colleges and universities, we took it into our careers. I went into entertainment. I worked with comedians, produced comedy specials, TV shows, helped them put out books. The comedians I worked with, I worked with comedians who pushed woke ideology in their material. At the time, we called it social justice. But those are the comics that I represented for the most part. And I thought we were changing the world and we were doing a good thing. And like a lot of you who have lost family members to this cult or are in the process of losing family members to this cult, you know that a lot of them have good hearts. I hear this from parents all the time. They say, my daughter's getting pulled into this in college, or my daughter has been pulled into this, or my daughter's cut off contact with me now because she got pulled into this and she has a really good heart and I don't know how to talk to her. And you don't have to tell me they have a good heart. I know they do. There's a lot of well-intentioned people who are being sucked into this, like in any cult. There are tactics being used on them, psychological tactics that are being used on them. And this is not to say that there are not people with bad intent in this cult as well. Oh, there are a lot of those as well. There are a lot of people who are attracted to authoritarian, controlling ideologies or belief systems or cults that allow them to take advantage and to gain power, money, control, fame, what have you. So there's a lot of those kind of people in there too. Anyway, that's just a little overview. We're going to be talking about ideological conformity today. And if you like this, if you find it helpful, please share it afterwards. And then the next few episodes, I think we're going to be talking about the same thing, but we're going to look at it from a different angle. So this episode is about ideological conformity and how the woke left is a cult. We're going to do one about violence, how they support violence. We're going to do one about their rituals and liturgies. Like these are the very religious kind of rituals they participate in, the really cringe stuff where they're like all these white people, hundreds of them bowing and apologizing to black people and washing their feet and like all of this public humiliation ritual kind of crap. We're going to cover that in an episode. So strap in. Why am I doing this one today? Here's why. So this channel, Deprogrammed, started in part to help dispel a lot of myths and lies about woke leftist ideology and to help people understand how it's different than liberalism. It is actually very illiberal. And that has been my goal, is to help pull people out of the woke left and to help people who have lost people to the woke left to understand it better. And even on my old show, I used to be on another podcast, started in, I think that was like 2017 or 2018, probably. And that was my specific goal being on that channel. And one of the goals that my partner at the time, we shared that goal. And so that's why we started that show. And before that, when I left the woke cult, I wrote this essay in 2017 that was trying to explain it. It was called, On Leaving the SJW Left and Finding Myself. Jordan Peterson shared it at the time. That's when there was this sort of influx of people who were interested in like, how did you leave and how would you help people deal with those who've been pulled into it? And that kind of trying to explain it in that Substack essay at the time, I was on, I think it's on Medium. Yeah, it was Medium, but now it's on Substack. Trying to explain that to my friends, my fellow cultists. And if you go back and read that old essay from 2017, I was really trying to talk to them and in a loving way and help explain what was happening in this belief system, this cult that we were in. Hoping that I would have a positive response. And what I got was, you guys already know this. What I got was, you're crazy. You've become a red-pilled right-wing troll. You're a Nazi. You're this, you're that. Just the total, like the great unfriending that you go through. So I sort of self-canceled. I sort of was like, here's this essay. And that was the end, right? Like that was after I decided I'm done working in entertainment. I can't keep doing woke comedy stuff. And that sort of set me on this path. And I'm still on this path. Like, this is still what I'm doing. There are still people who are finding themselves for the first time dealing with this. I know it's incredible to some of us who've been talking about it for a few years now, that there are still people waking up. There are people waking up every day. There are also people doubling down every day. And after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and after we saw this demonic celebration that was happening on the left, and not just an isolated few, happening all over the left, doctors, nurses, teachers, professors, people you know, your friends and family, celebrating this murder. It was disgusting. And after that happened, this is what always happens with these inflection points. When something happens that shakes us out of, our complacency, I guess you might say, this always happens. You see a bunch of people wake up and leave the left. That is happening. There are people all over. WalkAway is suddenly got another huge influx of testimonials of people who are leaving the left, who are leaving the Democratic Party, or just saying leaving the left and talking about why. And a lot of that is because they got to see that demonic energy after Charlie was assassinated. They got to see how many people on the left were full of this sickness. And so people are waking up and leaving. That always happens. You know what else happens? A portion of the left gets worse. That happens too. That's happened every time. A portion of the left gets worse. They double down. They get further radicalized. They get further into the cult. And I've seen this as well. And I've had, it seems to me there's like different people that hang out on Facebook versus Twitter. Some people do both, but for the ones that only use one platform versus the other, it seems to be people on Facebook. Generally, there's more people who are leftists that you might interact with there, or who are on the left, than you will on X. There's also people who I would describe as more of like normies. They're not online all the time. Great. They're out. They have real lives. They're not online all the time. They're maybe not aware of some of the stuff that's been happening in the past 10 years. They have started to notice something going on with their family members or friends. But now they've noticed because their family member or friend is doubling down. There's an old friend of mine who just posted like this sort of braggy virtue signaling thing that's like, I'm going to start banning people. It was basically like, it was a screenshot. That's what started it before it went further. It was a screenshot of communications with a family member. And it was gross. You know how a lot of these things are, where they think they're showing themselves to be a good person, but they're actually revealing themselves to be the opposite. It was a very gross discussion where this old friend of mine was like texting a family member and saying, if you don't hate Charlie Kirk, you're out of my life because he's vile and you're vile. I'm summarizing. And this person shared this and was like, I'm going to start doing this to other family and friends too. If you think Charlie was a good person, I can get rid of you too. Hold on one second. Okay, I've got this pulled up. This is a chart that I found very helpful when talking to people who are still in that cult. And as a result of seeing that person I used to know who ended up unfriending me over this, by the way, because I started trying to talk about it with them, and it was like, they can't hear what you're saying. They're not going to listen to anything you say, and then they're going to unfriend you. They're not going to give examples of the things they're saying. And it doesn't matter how civil you are, which I do encourage trying to be as civil as you can with the ones you're trying to reach. It doesn't matter how civil you are. They are going to unfriend you because they can't handle it. So this grew out of that, the conversations with that guys. I had seen this study going around a few months ago, and I thought it would be good to talk about it. So this is a graph. It's based on a study that came out a couple years ago, and someone put it together with a headline that says there is more diversity of thought on the political right than on the political left. And then below it, it says, although they pride themselves on open-mindedness, liberal thinking actually coalesces around a very narrow set of opinions, whereas the right diverges widely. Now, if you look at this graph, you'll see on the left, there's a very tight collection of blue opinions. And the further you are to the left on this diagram, that's like the more you identify as being on the left. So those little spindly lines going from the blue dots to the red dots, those are people who are somewhere on that spectrum when they describe themselves, the spectrum of left and right. And so the furthest to the left you get, that's like the most, they describe themselves as the most left, and the more to the right you get, they describe themselves as, very conservative or very much on the right, right? So that little tiny little cluster of blue opinions, that is the leftist cult. That's how much their opinions diverge from one another, which is to say they don't. They're all clustered together. This is a good study to know about. And there's several studies like this. This one just happens to have a very good graphic with it that shows it. But we've known this for years now. Leftists don't typically know this. And in fact, some of them were coming into my comments yesterday or the day before I shared the study, and they were saying what they usually say, and you have to give them grace because they don't know what they're saying. They don't know facts a lot of times. They don't read. If you give them a study like this, they won't look at it. We know that for the most part. And so they came in and they're saying what they do, which is projection all the time. And they're saying, oh, it's the right wing that's cultish, and the right wing is, you can't disagree with Trump, and you guys are all in a cult. And so, I gave the person the study and then nothing. They didn't have anything to say. It's like, why can you look at this and tell me what you think about this? But there on the left, it's all tightly clustered in blue. They have a very small range of opinion. And if you read through the study, it says that if you deviate even slightly from this small cluster of opinions, they consider you an outsider. They consider you a heretic, basically, of leftism. And I know this because I was in it for 20 years. It was anything that was like slightly outside. Here's an example I've given before. When they started years ago, when I was still deep in it, some of you guys remember Fit Mom. So the left, they perform these cancellation rituals, like tribal rituals, where they go after people and they all pile on, and they go after their own quite often as well, to kind of set these rules and keep people in line. And everybody went after Fit Mom. Her name was Maria Kang. She was a mom, I think like Asian American mom, who's really fit and was always doing motivational workouts for young mothers, and teaching mothers how to work out with their toddlers and stuff. And she did a poster that was a picture of her looking really fit with her kids hanging on her arms. And it said, what's your excuse? Kind of like trying to motivate you. You can work out even with kids. And they just went after her. It was just this complete, like, she's the worst. She's fat shaming. She's, trying to cancel her, sending hate mail, the whole thing. It was a very public mobbing. It made the news. It made the talk shows at the time. And, trying to intimidate her and trying to set an example. This is the other thing cults do, set an example for other people. Now, anybody in that cult at the time, like myself, who thought this was an overreach, like, why are we doing this to this woman? She's just trying to help moms get healthy, and she's got like these free programs and stuff. Anybody who expressed that opinion, if a tiny slight opinion outside of where the mob is going, where the cult is, what the cult opinion is on this issue, shame. You would bring the shame upon you. You would bring the mobbing upon you. If you said one thing that was outside of it. I saw a friend say this, like, I don't understand, why are we jumping on her? A friend in the feminist part of the woke world. She said, look, here's some other motivational workout posters from the guy that has a fake leg, and I forget his name, but here's some other motivational posters that are sort of similar. Like, what's your excuse? Like, he's fit and working out, even missing a leg. And they went off on her. This is your privilege. You're participating in fat shaming. How dare you? Like, you're not allowed to have even a slight deviation of opinion. Now, here on the right, if we look at all the data points on the right, all the opinions on the right, and how much broader that is, people on the left don't know this. I like for them to see the graph because they have no idea. And there are studies that show, where they survey people and they ask you, are you on the right or are you on the left, kind of thing. And then they say, can you summarize the opinions of the other side? Now, both sides have trouble doing this, but the people on the left are the worst. They have a much harder time doing this than people on the right. They don't know what people on the right think. They have no idea that. And again, this is because they're sheltered in this bubble, this cult bubble. They're not allowed to read certain things, not allowed to watch certain things. Everything they watch and every opinion they have is cult approved. They don't do the work to even hold those opinions. They're what's known as received opinions. Once they're in the cult, it's assumed that you are going to adopt all these other opinions as well. And they do. And they can't defend them. This is why, like that friend I mentioned, when I started asking him, he was talking about Charlie Kirk was vile and stuff. Can you give me some examples of what you mean? No, he couldn't. It was just, well, you're vile too. And, more name calling. They don't know how to defend their opinions because their opinions are given to them. They're received opinions. They didn't do the work necessary to hold those opinions. It's that cults do this. It's this is what you are going to think. And as you can see from the little tightly clustered blue data points, it's all like, it's very like we guys have a much easier time if you're not on the left anymore, or if you were never on the left. We have a much easier time of knowing what they think. Like, if you tell me, this person supports, they support mutilating and sterilizing kids. Of course, they don't call it that. They call it gender affirming care for kids. If they tell me they support gender affirming care for kids, I know their opinion on everything else already. I already know their opinion on everything else. But they don't know our opinions. And in studies, like, they have trouble accurately articulating what we even think. And they have no idea about this data set here. Look on the right. Do you see how much further apart all those data points are? Those are all the differences of opinion that we get to have on the right. Or if you just want to say, if we're not a part of the left, that's all the differences of opinion that we get to have with one another. We get to have differences of opinion on gun control, abortion, religion, culture, the economy, war, immigration. We have all kinds of policy opinions and differences. We have a lot more freedom of thought. We get to say what we want. We get to think what we want. Now, does that mean there's no cultiness that exists on the right? No, I'm not saying that. You can find pockets of it for sure. But in general, this is how much broad, like, the pockets of cultiness are they're somewhere in those data points. You know what I mean? And then outside of that, there's this entire range of opinions that we get to have. Our opinions are not handed to us and given to us like in a cult. You will find, if you start having discussions, if you can find someone on the left who's actually operating in good faith, and they do exist, I promise. I've had conversations with many of them who are operating in good faith. Now, there's fewer of those, right? Because the longer they're in the cult, the more the psychological tactics are used on them to prevent them from engaging in any kind of discussion with you at all. But you will still find some who want to operate in good faith and want to talk to you. And it's very obvious that they don't know what we think about things if we start going back and forth, because they are shocked to learn, oh, you oppose the war. Oh, you oppose big pharma. It's like, yeah, and I thought you guys did too. Or whatever your difference of opinion is, they come at it in a certain way. A lot of them assume, incorrectly, of course, because their little cult ideology and they're only listening to their cult, they assume, which is a really arrogant thing to do, that they speak for entire identity groups of people. Their cult is organized around identity, right? It's a central part of it. And so they assume that they speak for all these different identity groups. And so they think that there are no Black people who disagree with them, no gay people who disagree with them, no trans people, no women. They don't know any of these people. As we've seen from looking at this data set, they only associate with people who share their beliefs. And then what happens? They are encouraged to cut off contact with friends and family, like this old friend of mine was. This person I know from when I was a kid. That they are encouraged to make that little echo chamber smaller and smaller and smaller. And so they don't know anybody who disagrees with them, usually who's gay or trans or Black. They have a very limited social circle. So I often will tell them, like, hey, if you were interested in diversifying your social circle, like, I'm happy to make some introductions for you. This channel is full of resources. Deprogrammed is full of resources for people to share with those who are in the cult, or if you want to learn more about the cult of leftism. And if you go into the deprogrammed interviews section, there's interviews with all kinds of people who have left the woke cult. Now, most of the time when I share these with a leftist, if I am having a discussion with them, they won't watch it. You know this. They don't want to watch or read anything, especially something that challenges their views. But there are interviews with multiple trans people who left the woke left or were never part of it, gay people, Black people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, atheists, pretty much any kind of story or life experience you could think of, people who have left the woke left and talking about it and talking about how it's like a cult and explaining it. And the reason I talk to so many different kinds of people about the woke left is because I'm well aware that my personal story is not for everybody. It's going to turn some people off. There are certain prejudices that people have against Christians or against white people, or maybe they don't like the way listening to a woman and a woman's voice or what have you. There are certain things about my story that it's not going to be the key or the thing that works for everyone. And so I've interviewed all kinds of different people because they have the ability to speak to the woke cult in a way that I don't. And they have credibility. The woke cult gives credibility to people based on quote unquote identity. And so here's a whole archive of interviews with people that you can look through, and you can see leftists, that you can see that you don't speak for these groups of people. You don't speak for these identity groups. Okay, let me show you something else. So this, well, first I should show you probably, this is the study. Let's put this up. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. I don't usually show images like that. I show the screen, and then there we go. Okay. So this is the study. It's from the British Journal of Social Psychology. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but I know people in the chat were talking about before we started. Yeah, Pirate, I need tech support. Thank you for being here. Give it up for Pirate Tomsky. So I don't know if you guys saw the news, but the Alphabet, Google, YouTube, all of them have finally admitted admitted that the Biden administration, the federal government, the FBI came to them and pressured them to censor YouTubers, to take down videos and to strike channels. You guys who've been here for a while know that I had videos taken down. I received a strike for interviewing people who were not getting the vax for medical reasons or personal decisions, or they don't want to. They should not have to be compelled to get the vax. And people who were getting pressure from their employees to have to take it, who were being coerced. A lot of these people worked in the healthcare industry. Some of them, we blurred their faces, and you just heard the audio. That was one of the videos. I will always remember that YouTube not only took down and never let us put back up, but gave us a strike for it. If you get 3 strikes, your channel's gone, because you're not allowed to talk about these things. There were several COVID videos that got pulled down. And now they've come out and said, yes, the federal government did put pressure on Alphabet, on Google, and YouTube to remove videos that had anything to do that they didn't like about COVID policy, and about election interference in the 2020 election. And so they're going to be restoring some of those channels now that they censored back then. This is kind of like the Twitter files and the Facebook files. We all knew they were doing this, but leftists just, until you show them proof. And the funny thing is, when you do show them proof, hey, they admit it now, they don't care. They don't care. Usually. Yeah, that is a form of fascism. Hey, Jennifer. The federal government working with corporations to censor people as a way to get around the First Amendment. Yes, that's exactly what that is. So I mentioned that because there was a time when Facebook was censoring any scientific study I put up. Like they kept changing their terms of service, and they got to the point where they said, now our new terms of service is we're going to remove things even if they're factual, if they might cause vaccine hesitancy. Where did they get that pressure from? Zuckerberg has testified. They got that pressure from the Biden administration, from the federal government. And they were taking down scientific studies while claiming to be the party of science, which is absurd. So this is a scientific study, guys. Trust the science. And this one's from the British Journal of Social Psychology, and they were the ones that were trying to figure out if there's a difference in viewpoint diversity based on if you're on the left or on the right. It's a great study. I'll drop the link below in the video description so you can go and read the whole thing. I'm also going to show you this. So in recent years, in probably the past 10 to 15 years, young people on college campuses have reported an ever increasing amount of fear when it comes to sharing their opinion. And we know that organizations like FIRE, which track the, they sort of go and they rate the level of free speech that's allowed on campuses, that they've been putting out more and more alarming figures on which colleges have sort of locked down and clamped down on free speech, or at least have encouraged a culture of fear around speaking anything that's not a leftist opinion. This is an article from Campus Reform, and I believe this one's from 2 years ago. Yeah, January 2023. 63% of college students feel intimidated sharing their opinions on campus. The William F. Buckley Jr. Program published its 8th annual survey on college student opinions regarding free speech. The poll recorded a 13% increase in students who felt intimidated to share their beliefs on campus, which was a record high. If you go through and look at this, here's a graph. Have you felt intimidated in sharing your ideas, opinions, or beliefs in class because they were different than those of classmates or peers? 63% say they feel that way often. 23% say they feel that way frequently. That's 86%. 86%, the overwhelming majority, feel that way either frequently or often, intimidated to share their opinion because it's different from their classmates or their professor. The William F. Buckley Jr. Program at Yale University has released the data for its 8th annual college student survey. The poll focused on questions regarding free speech, hate speech, and the validity of the U.S. Constitution. According to the survey, 63% of the 803 U.S. college students interviewed admitted to feeling intimidated to share opinions, beliefs, or values that differed from those of their peers. Similarly, 58% of respondents revealed that they felt intimidated in sharing an opinion that was different than their professors, an 8% increase from the previous year. The survey results accorded with the growing hostility towards free speech that has been trending at schools all over the nation in recent years. As campus reform reported last year, some colleges have even gone as far as installing warning signs that read, "Attention, free speech being exercised ahead." This is not a joke. Some of you guys may not know the state of college campuses. They have started setting up in the past 10 years as woke became more popular. Woke ideology is not liberal. Woke ideology opposes free speech. Woke ideology wants censorship, wants violence. It's not liberal, but it's what's taken over all the left. And a lot of people call themselves liberal, but they've adopted this illiberal ideology now. And so what do they do on college campuses to pay tribute, to pay homage to the free speech past, right? Is they set up free speech zones. Can you believe that? Hey guys, hey students, hey college students, be on the lookout. In this area, you might hear some free speech, some opinions you don't agree that are not leftist in this little area. A lot of times when people would visit colleges, like Charlie Kirk often did, whenever conservatives would go to colleges, they would have to hold it in the free speech area because you don't have free speech everywhere, right? Warning. Here's another thing you probably didn't know. Some people, colleges would started making a big deal of bringing in emotional support animals, dogs, and they would advertise that, if a conservative speaker came to campus, like Christina Hoff Sommers, who's not even that conservative, but if she came to campus, that afterwards they were going to have a room where you could go and cuddle with dogs. So you could feel better because a conservative just came to campus to speak. And it was voluntary. You didn't have to go, right? But you still might have feelings about it. This is really what's been happening for the past 10 years. And as we know, that's if the conservative even got to speak. We've seen them cancel events because someone's just a total moderate conservative or classical liberal. When they haven't canceled the events, we've seen mobs of woke leftist cultists. These cults, they show up and bang on the windows and scream and try to intimidate and cause violence so that no other students can see or hear the lecturer. We've seen this. This has been going on for over 10 years. This happened at an event I did in Austin. It was a Women Leaving the Left event. It was me, Megan Murphy, Mary Lou Singleton, Michelle Evans, and a few others. There were ticket buyers. We had a really large conference room at the Austin Public Library, and protesters showed up and banged on the windows first of all, they intimidated people coming in, videoed them, threatened them. Cops did nothing. Then once we went inside and all the ticket buyers came in and we started the panel, it was really hard for anybody to hear us because they surrounded, it was all glass windows, the walls, and they surrounded and just started banging and screaming outside. And the cops did nothing. And this happens all the time. And we were women who were on the left. We're apostates, I guess. We're heretics, right? Apostates, we left. So 50% of the students thought, look at this. This is part of the cult indoctrination of what they're getting at colleges and universities. 50% of students thought that America was, quote, inextricably linked to white supremacy, end quote. Do you know who else believes that? White supremacists. You know who else believes that? The woke right and the woke left united on this, revisionist history that we're a white supremacist country. This is what students have been indoctrinated into in colleges. A third of them said they would prefer to live under a socialist system than a capitalist one. And 78% responded that systemic racism is a dangerous issue in America. They're indoctrinated. Do you know who did a great job of dispelling a lot of these myths that are being pushed on college campuses, the leftist indoctrination, the cult beliefs? Charlie Kirk. A better job of that than anyone. He would go to over, what was it? Was it 200 colleges a year? I mean, he was always, with everything else he was doing with Turning Point, he was always at these college campuses talking to kids. And for the first 5 or so years he did it, he didn't even film it. He just did it because he really believes in it, in talking to young people who disagree and helping them to think. You know, the way that the video clips and stuff get posted of him, where a lot of times for engagement, you know, they'll do these eye-catching titles like, you know, he owns the libs or he destroys or whatever. But if you looked at what he was really doing, it was way beyond that. Most of what he was doing was helping these young people learn how to think, because the colleges and the professors have failed them. The colleges and the professors are not teaching them how to think, they're telling them what to think. And you can see that when they would step up to the mic and try and challenge him, and they would spew out whatever received opinions in that little tiny cluster of blue opinions we saw. They would spew out whatever opinion they had that they had been given. And he would just gently poke and try to find out why do you think that? And it would all fall apart because they don't know how they arrived at that opinion most of the time. He was very good at asking them questions to help them think, which is what their professor should have been doing instead of telling them, these are your opinions, right? These are your received opinions. I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions for anybody who's new, who is newly dealing with losing friends and family to the leftist cult. I know there was an influx of some of you recently, and I've been talking to some people privately who this is new for them. In 2025, this is still happening because there are people on the left who are doubling down after what happened to Charlie. There are some people who are leaving, and there are others who are doubling down, and they're doing the whole like, I'm cutting you off thing now. So here are some questions that you could ask. Now, a study like this and that graphic of the data points, which you can get from the link I'm going to put below, it's very good to show certain people on the left, but it depends on how far along they are. Because if your goal is to win them over, not to win the argument, but to win them over, I just saw Vadi Bacham died yesterday, and I wasn't as familiar with him as I was with Charlie, but I had seen several of his sermons, and I know him to be a good and honorable man, based on his reputation. He was a mentor to some of my friends, and the things they've had to say about him. And I watched one of his last messages, which was about calling Christians to have courage after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And it's a great sermon. Everybody should watch it. I'll probably talk about it in an episode soon. But in that, he was talking about not becoming a reviler yourself, not repaying evil for evil, which I completely agree with. And it's a message I need to hear. He was saying in the speech, he was saying, I can revile with the best of them. Like, I'm a natural reviler. And this is, and if it's not an amen, it's an ouch, right? That's what he was saying. That's his quote, an ouch. And he said, this is an ouch for me. And it's an ouch for me too, to try and not do that. But he kept driving home the point that, you want to win the man, not the argument. And I would say, when you're in an online discussion with somebody, it depends. It depends, because you are going to get hateful, demonic people who are just there to mock and disrupt. And those people, I don't pay them a modicum of respect. They do not deserve it. There's also a Bible verse about responding to a fool a fool's folly, like with his own folly, in order to keep him from becoming wise in his own eyes. It's right next to a verse that says, don't do that. Don't respond to a fool with his own folly, lest you become like him. So there's these two, and I think it depends on each situation, the context, to know which of those kind of biblical tactics you're going to take with someone. There are the people, I think mockery and humor is the best response. Absolutely. But for people that you love and that you are in danger of losing to this cult, it's not the right response. It's not. You have to be gentle. And if they are, you will know better than I do. If they are too far along to share a study like this, if this would just make them angry or make them double down, then don't share it. But if they're at the beginning stages where you've started to have some arguments, you start to see some concerning behavior from them, all their friends think the same thing, maybe they mock you and shame you for being a conservative or for voting for Trump or what have you, or they come home from college and they're talking about white supremacy all of a sudden. Like, if these things are happening, you might try sharing a study like this, share the graphic, and don't tell them your commentary on it. Don't tell them your opinions on it. Send it to them and ask them what they think. This is what I would suggest. If this is for loved ones that you are trying to pull back, like help them not go into this cult, I would say, hey, this is surprising. This is kind of shocking that like liberals have a lot less diversity of thought and opinion. Like this study says they're not allowed to have differing opinions with each other. Do you think that's true? Ask them what they think. Say, what do you think about this? I'm trying to understand it. Like, can you help me make sense of this? And see what they say and see what kind of conversation you have. But go into it asking them what they think. And then if you're lucky enough to get to have that conversation in person with them, really listen to them. Don't just wait for them to stop talking so you can say what you want to say. Like, really listen to them and give them a follow-up question based on what they said. That's what I would suggest. Kevin Anderson's making a joke. Oh, look at that block. Well, for some of them, yes. Yes, we know that. We've been there. Like I said, that friend that I say friend, but he's someone I know from when I was a kid. It wasn't like we were close, but we were friends. We were in some of the same classes and stuff. And we were friends on Facebook for years. And yeah, just out of the blue, I just saw him posting this really gross, like, I'm cutting off family now. And it was the text of, one of his family members and trying to shame them. And he came off as very hateful. His family member, to their credit, whoever they were very kind and polite. And he shares and is like, I'm going to be cutting everyone off. And, I tried this on with him. I tried talking about this with him. And yeah, Kevin, your joke came true. It was unfriend. Also, he started deleting my comments. You can't have people reading anything that makes sense. So he has no answer for it, but like, let me just delete your comments and then unfriend you because it's too uncomfortable. That's when they're really far along in the cult. Once they've started saying I'm cutting off family members and making announcements, like, they're really far along in the cult, unfortunately. So I'm keeping this one short today because we're going to be doing a series of these. This one is just about ideological conformity, a couple studies about the lack of diversity of thought on the left and social conformity and the attitude on campus and fear on campus of having a difference of opinion. That's what today's episode was about. If it's helped you, leave a comment below. Feel free to share the video. I'm going to be doing several others on violence, ritual, and other traits that make woke ideology a cult, and also differentiate it from liberalism. If you have questions, let me know below, and I will see you guys next week. Oh, let me make this announcement. Next week, I'm going to be probably doing some videos from the road. So there's a possibility, depending on where I'm at in the schedule, like it may not be at the usual time. I will let you know on the YouTube community page, and thank you for your patience when I'm traveling. Okay, I will see you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.